I was 16 years old and in my junior year at a huge public high school in New Jersey. The building had 3 floors, but even that wasn't enough space for all the classes they offered, so the school turned part of the basement into 2 real classrooms. Everyone called that little section the chamber, because it felt cut off from the rest of the world. No intercom speakers down there, no morning announcements, no rules about leaving class if you finished early. The best part was the air conditioning that actually worked in a private bathroom nobody else used. That day in astronomy class we had a quiz. I always finished fast because the class was easy for me. As soon as I turned in my paper I texted my friend JJ who had the same lunch period in the next class in the other basement room. I told him to meet me in the bathroom because I was bored out of my mind. He answered with a simple, bet, and a couple minutes later the bathroom door creaked open and JJ walked in laughing. We started messing around, making dumb jokes, throwing wet paper towels at the ceiling to see if they would stick. Normal teenage stuff. Then JJ looked at his phone and his face changed. Someone from upstairs had texted him that the school was going on lockdown. We both grinned at each other like idiots. Neither teacher had seen us leave, and since there were no speakers in the basement, we figured nobody even knew we existed down there. We decided right then to sneak upstairs and walk around the empty hallways just for the thrill. Worst case, we'd say we never heard the announcement and get a slap on the wrist. We cracked the basement door open and stepped into the main first floor hallway expecting the usual fluorescent lights and maybe a few teachers peeking out of classrooms. Instead every single light was off. The hallway stretched out in total darkness except for a thin strip of gray daylight leaking in from the lobby windows way at the other end. That was weird. During drills the lights always stayed on. Something felt wrong immediately. JJ took one more step forward and whispered, "Dude, who's that?" I looked where he was pointing and saw a shape moving toward us from the far end. At first it was just a shadow, then it got closer and we could make out a man walking straight at us. He wasn't wearing teacher clothes. He had on a filthy hoodie, torn jeans, boots caked in mud, like he slept under a bridge. His hands were in his pockets and his head kept jerking left and right like he was looking for something specific. My stomach dropped. I grabbed JJ's sleeve and said, "Let's go, now." We spun around and bolted back down the basement stairs as quietly as we could. We heard the heavy fire door at the top creak open behind us, which meant he had definitely seen us. Both classroom doors were closed and the lights inside were off. We didn't want to bang on either door and draw attention, so we slipped back into the bathroom and killed the light. We crammed ourselves into the corner stall, the one farthest from the door, and pulled our feet up onto the toilet seat so nobody could see shoes underneath. The basement was dead silent. No fans, no heat, no noise except water dripping from the sink and our own breathing. We tried to slow it down but it sounded like freight trains in that tiny tile room. Then the bathroom door opened. A blade of light cut across the floor and vanished as the door shut again. Whoever it was didn't turn on the light. We heard slow footsteps crossing the tile toward our side of the room. They stopped right outside our stall. Heavy breathing started, loud and raspy, like the guy had just run up the stairs. I felt JJ shaking next to me. Then JJ did the dumbest thing possible. He leaned over and whispered right in my ear, "We gotta crawl out the other stalls." His whisper echoed off the walls like he had shouted it. The heavy breathing outside stopped instantly. A hand pushed on our stall door hard enough to rattle the lock. I whispered, "Go, go, go," and we dropped to the floor and crawled under the metal divider into the next stall. The banging started, loud metal slams that hurt my ears. We kept crawling, stall after stall, knees scraping on dirty tile until we reached the open side of the bathroom. The banging was constant now, like he was trying to break the door off its hinges. We jumped up, threw the bathroom door open, and sprinted straight to JJ's classroom. Light poured into the basement hallway and there he was, the same guy, standing 10 feet away staring right at us. We pounded on the classroom door like our lives depended on it. The teacher yanked it open, pulled us inside, and locked it behind us. JJ was talking a mile a minute, telling the teacher about the creepy guy following us. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. He told the teacher he saw a gun sticking out of the man's pocket. I hadn't seen any gun, but I didn't argue. The whole class was sitting on the floor in the corner, dead quiet, eyes wide. Nobody was laughing or calling us liars. A second later something banged on the door window hard enough to make the glass shake. We all jumped. Through the narrow window we could see the man's face pressed against the glass, twisting the doorknob back and forth. He banged again, harder, then again like he was furious it wouldn't open. After maybe 30 seconds he gave up, turned, and walked back toward the stairs. We sat in that dark classroom for over an hour without moving. The teacher kept asking us quiet questions, shaking his head more with every answer. Finally a call came from upstairs and we were told to line up single file, walk up the stairs, and out the front doors where police cars were waiting with lights flashing. JJ and I gave descriptions to 3 different cops and the dean. One officer put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You boys did good staying calm." They sent us home early. The next week the school installed security cameras in every hallway and stairwell. They hired extra guards and put new locks on every door. The story never hit the news. To this day I have no idea if they ever caught the guy. I'm 100% convinced he came to that school to kill someone, and JJ and I just happened to be the first kids he found. Years later, after I had become a police officer myself and retired from 20 years on the force in New Jersey, I still think about that day every time a school lockdown call comes over the radio. But the single worst call I ever answered happened on a dark, stormy afternoon when I was still patrol. Dispatch sent me to a middle school a few towns over for a lockdown in progress. A teacher had looked out back and seen a suspicious man climb out of a white van parked behind the building and walk straight through the red door that leads to the gym hallway and boys' locker room. I pulled up behind the school less than 5 minutes later. The white van was still there, engine off, doors locked, nobody inside. Rain was pouring down. I called in the plate and stepped through that red door with my flashlight in one hand and my other hand resting on my gun. The whole school was dark, emergency lights only. I moved down the gym hallway as quiet as I could. The locker room door was cracked open. A secretary from the front office met me in the lobby and whispered that the man was last seen heading toward the boys' locker room and might be armed. I called for backup and crept back down the hall. When I pushed the locker room door open, the darkness inside was absolute. No windows, no lights, just the beam of my flashlight cutting through the damp air. A big ventilation fan on the ceiling was blowing loud white noise, but over that I kept hearing little metallic dings and scratches, like someone tapping on locker doors from the far side of the room. Every time I moved toward the sound it stopped, then started again somewhere else. I felt like a mouse in a snake cage. I swept the light across rows of lockers and benches but saw nothing. The noises kept circling me. I ended up in the corner by the bathroom door when a sudden loud slam came from the attached football team locker room. I almost dropped my flashlight. I shouted, "Police, show yourself." And a kid's voice screamed back, "Help," from inside one of the big lockers. It sounded muffled, like his mouth was covered. The locker door was rattling with pounding from the inside. My stomach turned. I ran to the locker and told the boy to hold on, I was getting him out. I stepped back outside to the parking lot to grab bolt cutters from my trunk and the white van was gone. I had been inside maybe 4 minutes and the guy vanished. I kicked myself for not writing the plate down the second I arrived. I radioed every unit in 3 counties to be on the lookout for that van. I ran back inside and had the office send the custodian with master keys. When we finally got the locker open, a 12-year-old boy stumbled out bleeding from a long cut on his arm. He was shaking and crying but managed to tell us a man grabbed him in the bathroom, held a knife to his back, and forced him into the locker while he tried to walk him out to the van. The boy fought hard enough to make noise and the man must have panicked when he heard my siren. A week later that same white van was spotted in a 7-Eleven lot 30 miles away. Local police arrested the driver after the boy identified him. They found rope, duct tape, and zip ties in the back. I still get sick thinking how close that kid came to disappearing forever. Fast forward a few more years and I was out of the job, just a regular guy visiting colleges with my niece who was looking at Rowan University in South Jersey. She couldn't make the trip so I went alone to check out the campus for her. I stayed at a Hampton Inn right off the highway. After a long day of tours I grabbed dinner and was back in my room by 8 o'clock planning an early night. Around 9:30 a loud alarm started blaring inside the room and a bright white strobe light started flashing from a little box in the ceiling corner. A recorded voice came on loop saying, "All Hampton Inn guests please remain in your rooms, this is a lockdown, do not open your door for any reason." I had never heard of a hotel lockdown before. I thought it was kind of cool at first, like the building had its own SWAT protocol. The noise stopped after a couple minutes but the strobe kept flashing and the message repeated every 20 seconds. It was annoying but I turned on the TV for background noise, changed into sweats, brushed my teeth, and climbed into bed. I was flipping channels trying to ignore the light when the room phone rang. I picked up expecting the front desk to say it was a false alarm. Instead, a woman's voice, shaking, told me to stay calm, walk to the door, and leave the room immediately. I asked what was going on and she said, "Sir, there is someone in your room with you right now. Get out now." I dropped the phone and spun around. The room looked empty. I checked under the bed, nothing. Bathroom, empty. Then I noticed the closet door next to the bathroom was open maybe 2 inches. Through that crack I saw an eye looking back at me. The door slid shut fast. I ran out into the hallway barefoot and slammed the door behind me. Front desk staff rushed me downstairs and showed me security footage from an hour earlier. A short guy in a gray hoodie was walking the 3rd floor hallway trying key cards on random doors until one worked on mine. He slipped inside and never came out until police dragged him out in handcuffs 20 minutes after I escaped. He was in his 40s, unshaven, smelled like cigarettes. As they walked him past me, he looked up and smiled like he knew exactly who I was. The manager said he had been hiding in that closet watching me the entire time I was in the room. I still check every hotel closet to this day, and I never trust a sliding door that isn't open all the way. Those 3 lockdowns happened years apart, miles apart, to completely different people, but they all started the same way. A normal day, a locked door that wasn't supposed to open, and someone on the wrong side of it who wanted in. If you ever hear an alarm you've never heard before, or see a shadow where it doesn't belong, don't wait to figure out if it's real. Run first. Because sometimes the monster isn't hiding under the bed. Sometimes he's already in the room, waiting for the lights to go out,